Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of black?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself. Ooh. Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No!
here we are. Episode 20.
We've done 20 of these.
We have.
They called us insane. They called us crazy. They said it wouldn't work. They might still be right.
What? Yeah, right? Seriously. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Happy
Here-
Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy Wednesday.
Yeah.
Here we are. 11:44 a.m.
I mean,
random
schedule perfect.
time.
Perfect timing.
Eventually, we really are. We promise we'll get some sort of a regular schedule, but it won't be this year.
No, it won't be this year.
It won't be this year.
I mean,
Wednesdays.
as they say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, not really, but yeah. It's not exactly the way time zones work. Yeah. Can you imagine if time zones were like, it's an hour and 13-minute difference?
Exactly. Yeah, like really mess it up. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah,
That'd be hilarious.
That would be.
So,
really... all
it's
right.
the last show for about a week because your Ben's going to go and have a baby number 2.
Yes, well, my wife Michelle is going to have a baby. I do the.
I thought it was you. Are you not pregnant?
In that, yes. We are going to have a baby.
Congratulations.
Yay. So yeah, this will be our last show for a few days, but we'll be back next Tuesday. So and yesterday was really nice. We talked for the first half hour about IP. If you didn't watch yesterday's episode, go back and watch that. It was a nice little discussion.
It was a nice discussion.
Yeah, and feel free to ask us more questions about it. We loved and still love John August and Craig Mason's podcast Script Notes. It really was beneficial in the early days of our career.
It was.
I didn't even know about it before we sold anything. I feel like it was like right.
No, I was listening to it at least a year before the sale of Winter's Night.
I think you listened to it for a while before
I did listen to it for a while.
You're definitely more of the early adopter. I tend to be like, well, I'll get around to it.
I see this podcasting phase takes
honestly, like driving to and from meetings, like for years, like I was listening to their podcast. I loved when new ones came out, and I think it's really beneficial. And they have their own perspectives and their own opinions and their own kind of
they are
on their careers. And I think everyone has their own unique experience on the business, the craft, the career. So I figure why not share ours as well, more than just the actual craft part, which we're clearly sharing now for 20 episodes. But we have a lot of crazy ass experience.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because John and Craig are exceptionally successful screenwriters.
Yeah, really.
Really successful screenwriters.
We are not. No, we're
on the way. We're just at different levels.
Yeah, I would say moderately successful.
Yeah, I would say moderately successful screenwriters.
On the scale of screenwriters, I would say very successful
individuals.
Yes, but on the scale of Hollywood screenwriters, we're in the moderately successful.
Yeah, I would say we were moderately successful. Yes, indeed. And they also came up at a different time that we did. Like John and Craig came up during the 90s and early 2000s.
Totally.
And ours were towards the
2014
onwards, so I think and again I think even now screenwriters that are coming up now, I mean, I read something yesterday on Twitter that I was like, what? Again, I'm not sure I agree with it, which was along the lines of a great way to try and break in as a screenwriter is TikTok. And I was like, what are you talking about? What? I mean, there are a bunch of people disagreeing, but kind of saying, again, it's all this aspect of how do you get into a writer's room? But ultimately, it's the question of, can you use social media today to break in as a screenwriter? And I actually think you can. I think we've seen it with Nate.
Yeah, I think we've seen it. I think it's possible. I don't think it's the easiest route. Not that there is an easy route. I think it's just one additional possible way. And I think when you're trying to break in, you gotta throw out as many lifelines as you can and hope that one sticks.
I think screenwriting Twitter. It's interesting. The thing that we see a lot on screenwriting Twitter is emerging. I don't like to use the word wannabe because it feels
emerging is good.
Emerging screenwriters, people who are, starting to make these steps into this world, really support. I
don't like the term pre-WGA though. I find that strange.
Yeah, I do too. But
everyone is pre-WGA until you're WGA.
Yeah, completely. I mean, ultimately, I guess it's shorthand. It's shorthand for something. It's aspirational. I suppose. Sure. I mean, like,
your way of saying I will be with WGA one day. Like, can you imagine putting on a headshot pre-SAG?
Right. Maybe I should start putting on the pre-best-selling author.
Pre-best-selling author. I mean, honestly, though, like, I never.
Anyway, I get the idea. It's an aspirational tag that people support each other through. And ultimately, I think what I find surprising sometimes is I go, oh, there are X amount professional screenwriters who have X amount followers.
Sure.
And there are emerging screenwriters and aspiring screenwriters who have way more followers simply because people get into the emotion of, oh, this person is going for their dream.
Camaraderie. I mean, look, when I moved out here to be an actor, and granted, I didn't have an incredibly successful acting career, but I loved being around other struggling actors who were going through the same thing as me. We were all in classes together. I mean, I paid a shit ton to be in those classes. I worked in bars and restaurants where half the people I was working with were all struggling actors, and you feel you try and lift all of yourselves up.
Yes.
And I think that's great.
And I think that's great too. But it's interesting, isn't it, that those people seem to have more followers than working professional screenwriters.
Well, because I think it is that screenwriters feel like distant from you as a struggling screenwriter. I mean, look, I think about myself 15 years ago, 20 years ago, going, who would I be more interested in being quote unquote friends with?
Sure.
The super successful screenwriter who probably wouldn't give me the time of day, or the guys who are in the trenches like me.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah. So it's interesting. But anyway, I think social media is something that perhaps we weren't doing when we were trying to break in. So I think every generation of screenwriter has their thing. And again, you see it. Again, I've been learning all about book talk lately, which is TikTok for books. And it is a way that people are selling buttloads of books on TikTok. And it's fascinating going, who would have thought that even 2 years ago that was a thing? So anyway, always moving forward with the things. Again, I don't know if trying to become a screenwriter or a writer's assistant or that on TikTok is a way of doing it, but it was just an opinion somebody shared.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Maybe. You'd have to have the people who are hiring watching. It's the only way, right? I mean, the only way social media works is if the people who can move you forward in your career are actually paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I mean, how many times do you see a viral video by somebody go, oh, and again, if they do things consistently, you're like, this person, again, I could potentially see it in like writing of sitcoms. I feel like stand-up comedy is a great way to be able to become a writer on a sitcom.
Yeah.
So perhaps if there's a humorous element or a viral video that people go, oh, this person is consistently producing funny content. I could see why if I was running a comedy room, I'd go, you know what? There's that guy who made that video, or that girl, or that person who made that video to be as politically correct as possible.
Certainly has become a thing with casting.
It really has. Absolutely. How many followers do you have?
Right. I know.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So, Jake, you were going to have a topic to talk about. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. You kind of threw it at me like 10 minutes. I was like, well, what are you talking about?
I know. That was the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to. Yeah. So there was a thing we talked briefly about it yesterday. There was again, it comes down to social media. There was someone who tweeted a very controversial statement which said, if you use the words "we see" in a script, you're a bad writer. You are bad. And it got a bunch of stuff, and that writer ended up blocking everyone and then making his comment, his Twitter private.
Oh wow, he got he was
he did. Anyway, I'm not saying to
the other extreme, but
yeah. But I do want to have a conversation about perceived rules and where those are up to today. That's
really interesting. So what would you say are the most commonly perceived rules of screenwriting?
Yeah, great question. Well, I always remember when we started working together, the very first script I sent you, which was called The Pickup, I wrote "we see" in it a lot. We do, we hear, we this, we that. And you had said, just be careful of that. I've heard from my teacher, I think was at the time, that's a bit of a no-no. Now, that particular one, I think is, again, it's where are you in your career? Because if I were to pick up a script from a new writer and it was filled with those, I think I would have a reaction to that.
You do? Interesting.
I do. I'm not going to lie about that. Again, I wouldn't say I'm a snob about it, but I do notice them.
What do you think it is about that bothers you?
Because it feels redundant. A lot of the time.
I agree with that.
It feels redundant language use. And so I go, this person hasn't spent as long writing this script as they could. They've fallen back on an easy
in theory, right? The reason behind that rule is because everything that you write, everything in a screenplay should be seen.
Yes.
It's on the screen.
Yes.
So if I say, we see a table and chairs, well, duh.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's
a table and chair.
Yeah. If you were to, it's exactly, Jake enters the room. We see a table and chairs in the corner. We hear Jamiroquai playing on the radio.
Right.
Don't need any of it. Jake enters the room. A table and chairs are in the corner. Jamiroquai's on the radio.
Exactly. Now, there probably are occasions where it's not clear.
I agree.
That the camera is supposed to be in one place and the action for the scene is happening in another place. Yes. So Jake and Ben are having a conversation. We see that behind them, someone's poking their face through the window. Could, in theory...
But again, it's Jake and Ben are having a conversation. Someone pokes their head through the window.
And the reality is, you could say, if the point was that you didn't want them to see it, you could say, unnoticed by them.
Exactly right. Now, there are times when I feel like it's very useful. I feel like if you're trying to create kind of like a shot, but don't want to specifically... Say again?
When do you think you should create a shot?
Well, whenever we write, we want to create the image in the mind of the reader of what that person is seeing on the screen. Sure. So, for example, if it were the London skyline,
great,
you might say we soar down through the streets following one person.
Could I say soaring through the streets following one person?
You maybe could. But again, it would be the way that it was constructed might be.
I mean, technically speaking, as I just said, everything written is either seen or heard, or at least, I mean, we do things in our scripts that aren't necessarily seen or heard in a literal sense, but would be seen through a character's emotional response. Yes. And every once in a while, we comment to the reader as well.
And again, I think that's okay. I think it's okay to write things in scripts occasionally that aren't perceived
action
on screen.
Specifically action.
Yes.
is intended to be seen.
Yes.
If I'm writing a line of action, it's intended to be seen. So why, I guess, and I'm not this is just this is the conversation, because I tend to be on your side, which is I don't think it's always, I don't think that you have to follow that rule, because I tend to be very much against rules of screenwriting.
I agree. Yes.
But you would really have to convince me why those two words are necessary.
I agree.
And so far in our writing, I
think we've maybe used it a couple of times, and only when we genuinely cannot find, like, if we see is that beginning, like, it's always going to be the easiest version.
Right.
It's always going to be the easiest version. So anyway,
it's so easy that it feels cheap is, I think, part of the problem with using it. It feels cheap versus trusting. And I think that's what it is. A seasoned screenwriter trusts that the visual they're creating through their action will be able to be seen in the reader's mind. A person who uses we see or we move down or we this or we that is not trusting. You're feeling like you have to tell them that that's what's happening, when the reality is that is what's happening.
And yet, WGA Awards season comes, we get sent all the scripts, and I find we sees here and there all the time.
Well, that's why I asked you why you would judge, why you would look down upon a young screenwriter, because I don't know that there should be two standards.
And yet there are. I feel that if you are an emerging screenwriter, you should be putting your best foot forward. And I think that currently and again, I might be wrong about this. I'm not a reader. We are now moving into producer stuff. And occasionally I see that we're developing 2 scripts at the moment with other writers, and both of them have at 3. And I think all of them have we sees in them. Again, I don't go, but I would
go. See, I don't look. If it was every sentence, I would go, this person needs to this person needs to work on writing.
Overuse.
If I saw it a few times in a script, I'd go, okay, that's their choice. They're the writer. I don't judge it unless it hurts the read.
Yes.
But I will say that it does give me a sense sometimes of a writer who is thinking too much like a director. That's one of the things that I do. And any times that when I see camera movements, dolly up, pan down,
raining,
I go, this person went to film school. This person's thinking like a director, and that's not necessarily terrible. I think that it's just I think it depends on who's reading it, right? Like, if you're an emerging screenwriter, the most likely the people reading your script are readers, and readers are taught to pay attention to rules.
I know.
Whereas if you're giving a script to a director, they don't give a shit.
Totally.
We're not going to go, how dare this writer write dolly up?
But it's tough, isn't it? Because I was reading something which was about
whatever, you know what I mean.
Nightcrawler, and that an assistant was given the script for Nightcrawler without the title page on it and not knowing where it came from, and apparently it's filled with we sees.
And
we this and we that.
That's what I mean. An assistant,
and that person didn't get the job because they were making criticisms about we see. So it's like, what do you do?
Interesting. The reader didn't get the job because they made criticisms on an award-winning screenplay.
Completely. So anyway,
I just say there's no fucking rules when it comes to that. Be careful. Don't be lazy. Remember that what you're writing will be seen.
Yes.
So unless it really feels like I want to convey this in the best way I can convey that is by using the royal we.
Then go with it.
Go for it.
Then go with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So other rules, I think calling out specific music.
Hello, fam. Hello.
Calling out specific music. It can be limiting because we read a script recently. I didn't know 3/4 of the music that was referenced in that script, and it meant nothing to me, and it was a waste of space.
Right.
In that particular.
But interestingly, like I knew one of them, and it was in my head for days.
Sure, totally. So, but again, you never know. You never know what
our script for the princess. The first draft had music cues in it.
It did, and it had one specific one.
One specific. I think we might have done two somewhere in the script, but we
called out. We said, and during this. Barracuda plays, and then even jokingly, like after action, she slices off his head. Ooh, Barracuda! You know, like we were having fun with that. Yeah, and again, I think you should go. Is this going to be really well known by everyone who's going to be reading this script?
Yeah. I think
and does it serve the moment I'm trying?
That's the key. If you can say that the moment could be served by a hard rock song picks up with a guitar riff that gets us in the mood, like versus having to say a specific song, then I would always go with the former.
Yeah.
If the specific song is important to the story or the character, like if you have to call out that they're listening to Ani DiFranco because part of their character is that they're the biggest Ani DiFranco fan ever. Like, then I get it, But
if they're singing along to it.
Or if they're singing along to it, that's a whole other thing, right? Yeah. If they're singing, we did have a music thing in another script where
they were singing along to Coolio's Gangster's Paradise.
Oh, and in another one we had a guy singing in the shower.
Totally, it's absolutely right.
So, I mean, that's different. The idea that people say don't ever put music cues in because you don't know if you'll be able to get that music for the production. I say forget that. Everybody reading it knows you don't know whether you're going to be able to get that music for production. And
is it serving the story?
Is it serving the story?
First thing. Is it specific? And is it very important to? Is it very important? But if it's like she comes home from work, slumps down in front of the TV, puts on some depressing music, or some, you go like something like Blank by Adele, whatever.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. By just using the word something like, you can get away with a lot.
Totally. Yeah.
And sometimes to elicit the clearest and cleanest image, a specific song, especially if it's a popular song that everybody knows, that will be better.
Yeah,
that can make the read better. But I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, saying if you're worried about it and you go, a song like blank plays on the radio, is fine.
Yeah.
So that is a rule.
There's that one. Then I would also say overuse of parentheses.
Ooh, parentheticals, really? Now that's one that. Now, do you think that's a valid rule or a non-valid rule?
I think it's a valid rule.
Well, I will say we have changed our writing significantly over the years.
We have, and as we talked about, I think in another episode, we sometimes use it as a formatting cheat. And what I mean by that is there a way I can, so for example, generally, a parenthetical is used for, I am trying to make sure that you, the reader, understand the way in which this line is being delivered. Because I can say, thanks, Ben, or I can say, thanks, Ben.
I roll.
So sometimes that's necessary. What we don't like, because we feel that it takes up space, is what we call line action, which is when one person is talking and the other person is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jake, I think we should go to the circus today. Ben nods, but doesn't say anything. Jake continued, I really like the circus. I think there's a way that we could get in for free. Ben gets up and leaves the room. Jake, wait, Ben, where are you going? Aren't we going to the circus? So that would be line, action, line, action, line, action. And to be clear, when you format that, that's almost a third of a page.
Right.
Because you've got a line for Jake, a line of my dialogue, a space, a line of action, another space, another line taken up by my name, another, it takes up the way that these screenwriting software is formatted. So what we've taken to doing is putting a parenthetical in the middle of that to alleviate that. So now it would read, Jake, I really want to go to the circus today. In parentheticals, Ben just nods.
Or off Ben's nod.
Or off Ben's nod. Yes, totally. A bit more. Ben gets up and walks away. Again, and all of a sudden that now 8 or 9 lines has now become 6.
There's also a version that we've taken to doing that people would probably frown upon, but I think it's totally fine, which is, Ben and Jake are sitting at a bar, and drinking beer. Ben says, how you doing today, Jake? Jake, parenthetical, drinks.
Yes.
It's been a rough one.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And so the drink is technically action. And a lot of people would say, well, wait a minute, there should be a line that said Jake drinks.
Totally.
But it's such a cleaner read.
Absolutely.
And the drinks informs the dialogue. And so if it's action that informs the dialogue, not it's like it's a cheat, but it's also like, it's a cheat, but it's kind of not. But it informs the way they're going to talk. So it's
totally, absolutely right. Yeah. And ultimately with that, it's what's the most efficient use of space? Again, it's something that we don't really talk about hugely as screenwriters. We're always talking about what's the dialogue, what's the action, but ultimately you're trying to write a screenplay that is going to be as short as possible. Because the longer the screenplay, the less likely someone is to, honestly, sadly, move forward with it. They might not even read it if it's too long. So what is the way you can make something as pithy as possible and yet still get all the meaning that you, the writer, wants to do it? So overuse of parenthetical, I really frown on, because I get the way that you're meant to say that.
I would say for me, I would qualify that by saying overuse of parentheticals with adjectives.
Yes.
If the parenthetical includes a verb and or a reactionary idea that still informs a dialogue but is not something that is a line read,
yes,
I'm okay with it.
Sure.
And one of our, I would say, more recent mentors on a TV show had us doing way more. And he's very, very, very successful, been doing a very long time writer, who was like, make it a parenthetical. Make it a parenthetical.
Yeah, and that's it. That's what we're talking about earlier. Is there a way to make this line of action a parenthetical? Yeah. And that, I think, is what has been our cheat. I don't think it's everything is cheating. I just think it's a formatting thing that lets you go.
It's a stylistic thing. It's not going to fuck up the read. That's the important part.
Yes.
No one is going to be confused. Wait, is that action or is that supposed to be the way he says it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I think from you're writing for a read. You're writing to create the best version in somebody's mind.
Yeah.
It's not about the rules. It's a read.
And so I will add one final thing, which is camera movement and camera direction, or what's often known as directing on the page.
Right.
So again, do I need to say we track along, we dolly along, all of that stuff? Or do I just need to see what's happening? If I want to say moving through the field, or they walk through the field, I know what I'm seeing on the screen. It's them walking through the field.
Yeah, it's what we were saying earlier.
Exactly. And ultimately, what I feel that it does is if I call out cameras and things like that, I'm actually strangely taken out of the experience, the visceral experience I'm having dealing with and reading a story about people. And all of a sudden, I'm a director.
It feels like production instead of storytelling.
Yes, it does. And that's it. I think it's a very good way of putting it. It becomes about production rather than, so again, overuse of parenthetical, overuse of or use of song, or even overuse of we see.
Or editing. Yeah, it's directing and editing and all the things that go to that aren't really our job.
Yeah.
And I think that, as always, if it's the best possible way to write that in your movie, go for it.
Go for it.
I don't believe, as you were saying, though, it depends on who's reading your script.
It does.
If you're submitting to competitions, which I could do an entire other half an hour on competitions, but if you are submitting to competitions, they may frown upon some of these screenwriting rules.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. Why are we writing screenplays? Are we writing for competitions? No, we're not.
Totally.
We're writing to get movies made.
TV
made. And if you can get your scripts to people who are actually part of this business, a lot of these rules fall away. If you only can get your script to the gatekeepers that are on the outskirts of the business, the young, out of college, out of film school readers, that's where you might end up hitting some roadblocks with rules.
Sure.
I hear it. A lot of rules in the Princess scripts in various different ways.
Absolutely.
There are lots of rules about spacing. There are lots of rules about slug lines. There are lots of rules about where certain things should happen on certain pages.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is so subjective.
Yes.
It's good to know what they are.
I agree. And it's like we were talking about, again, it's another episode. It's like knowing something, if it's, hey, an inciting incident should happen between pages 10 and 15. Well, what's that? Why does that thought process exist? Well, it means that something should happen early on in the script that makes the audience go, oh, I was starting to get comfortable when something changed. Something changed. And again, can you go, well, what if something changes on page 1? Yeah, it can do. And that's a choice as well. And what do you lose if you do that there?
Yeah.
What do you go, oh, well, I'm not going to get a chance to know this person in quite the same way or whatever. But again, it's just about knowledge. We go, don't worry, I'm going to put that later.
Yeah, because you can go, actually, the story's better that way. The experience of watching the movie is better that way.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's what we did with The Princess. We wanted boom, action, straight from we wanted the first paragraph to be like, okay, I've seen this movie before because it's about a fairy tale princess. And the second paragraph was like, and then she kills them all. Right. You go, oh, cool. And that moment you were in.
Totally.
So anyway, that's today's discussion of rules. There are no rules, but it's good to be aware of certain things.
Yeah, I think that's really important for anyone watching that is looking to write. And if you've heard of rules that you are curious about and don't know whether they're ones that are actually things people care about, comment and let us know what those rules are, because I'll be curious.
Yeah.
I would say I've never, not once in our entire career since we sold Winter's Night, had anyone look at our script of ours and say, you need to change this because you're not supposed to do it that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Not a single time.
Yeah.
Not with any of the things we just talked about and not with other things that we've done.
Yeah, sure. Totally.
So by all means, I'd love to hear what writing teachers and your mentors have told you about
what
rules.
book you read. I'll take my sweatshirt off. It's very hot. I'm just going over here to do this.
Baker's going to
change show my nipples
now. And there he is.
I'm wearing the Star Wars t-shirt.
You're in the Star Wars t-shirt today.
We alternate.
Cool.
All right then. Outline. Yeah.
You want to try it, or because you only have?
You know what? I remember there's a reason we can't. It's because I've got this fun with my Google Drive.
Ah.
So someone asked yesterday, why is Ben doing all the typing? Is Jake just lazy? And I mean, yes.
The
answer. The answer is yes, but I have an issue with my Google Drive and I've not been able to fix it. And what happens is, as we've talked about in the past, me and Ben share a Google Drive, so we have access to all of our documents at any particular point. But what's happening weirdly with mine, I've tried to look for a solution online. I've looked a lot about it, is when I go to open up the document and save it, it gives me a warning signal every 2 minutes. So this document cannot be saved. It exists in a thing that doesn't blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so we didn't want that to happen. So we're looking at Ben's screen.
Very, very, very strange.
This is very strange. So we are currently writing an outline for our movie. Our movie is about a demon and a demon hunter that team up to save the life of the Antichrist. Our demon hunter is currently called Hank. He could be a Woody Harrelson type. I quite like that comp the other day. And we have just met our demon. Currently, we imagine being played by Charlize Theron. There before, we just called her Charlize. And we are meeting our characters in their regular life. And so we are seeing what their regular life looks like. This is, I think, probably a fairly kind of common quote unquote hero's journey idea. Hero's journey being Joseph Campbell, which is that, and again, it was adopted I think in some very good movies like Star Wars and The Matrix as being a kind of a paradigm. Not all movies are written as hero's journeys, but I think this kind of fits into it, whereby early on in the story you meet your characters, your protagonists, doing what they do when they're not doing the thing that the movie is about.
I mean, I think about a lot of times when I think about story structure. I just kind of think about, like, if you were sitting around a campfire or at dinner and you're telling a story, and the people that you're talking about and the story you're talking about are people that no one at this campfire or dinner table knows before. You would give context to who they are. If I was talking about you and I wanted to tell the story of when we sold Winter's Night, I would say, my writing partner, Jake, and I, we used to have to work, 3 jobs, and we would, it was really difficult. We met, through Buddhism. He, is British, and he was working at the Apple store and I was working at a restaurant. Right. And then then you'd set up the context. And then one day we met with Lawrence Gray and he had the same idea. Yeah. And then you go, now I have the context. And so I can understand the rest of the story.
Totally.
Completely.
And again, it's almost like telling a joke as well. You have this first part of it, which is and then
up before the punchline, right?
Exactly right. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's just good. A lot of times, like, screenwriting really is just like, how do you tell the best version of a story where people can follow it and get the most enjoyment out of it?
Yeah, and I think ultimately as well, there's a couple of things that one can do. Ultimately as well, I think, and it's a good question for this is, why do we care?
Why do we care?
Why do we care? Why am I watching a movie about this guy where I go, you know what, I really want to see what happens with this person because I'm intrigued by them. And it can be I'm intrigued by them. It can be I care about them. I feel compassion for them. What is the thing? Now, I might argue. Well, no. Here's the thing. I'm intrigued by both of these characters at the moment. I have a bit of a mystery going on. We've seen our Charlize character 100 years ago stop a bombing because school children were going to be hurt in it, and I go, this is a good person.
Right.
I then see her get into a fight with her boss and see in a reflection of some water on the floor that, oh, hang on, they're not human. I then cut to 100 years later. So I've made myself care about her, and I've made myself go, wait, what? Who is she? What is going on? I increase that mystery by jumping to 100 years later, and she looks exactly the same. And then I have a moment with her where something happens.
Yeah.
I see. Again, I'm asking questions. Why did she just collapse in the shower? What's going on with that? Okay. Right. Then I go to a seemingly unrelated person who I go, okay, maybe he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy who works behind.
Good question about why do I care? I think is it's your primary reason for watching past Act 1, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the plot will get you in, but really, usually, whether it's movies or TV, it's why do I care about this person in this situation?
Right.
You know, sometimes you can do it really fast.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes half an hour potentially to understand why I care about this person in this situation.
Yeah.
You know, and I do think that there was a criticism that I will take of The Princess that people felt as though because the movie started the way that it was, we didn't know enough about her and her backstory to care right away. Our thought process, but everybody's wrong at some times, and we weren't the only ones, because trust me, we didn't have the final say. The directors and the studio had their say, the producers, everybody. But our thought process was a young girl in chains at the top of a tower who is a princess in a trope that we know is being attacked. Why wouldn't I care? How much do I need to know to care about this person? And then the way we tried to add in more depth was through flashbacks, and those got muddled along the journey, but that is a story for another time. I think though that audiences like to understand at least enough to know why they're wanting to watch this movie. And sometimes that's not done very well. And you go, this feels like, okay, you're forcing this on me. You're forcing me to care, and I don't really.
Totally.
And sometimes it's done great. I mean, I'll use The Terminator as a very interesting, non-traditionally structured movie. Over Black, it literally tells us as the audience that the fate of the world is at stake. So immediately I'm going, okay, I know I'm supposed to care about this movie, which gives me enough time to be with my villains for a minute. But they don't just leave it at that. We then meet Sarah Connor, and we see her as a person, and we realize that she's the one whose life is at stake. If we didn't see any of that, if we didn't meet her roommate, if we didn't meet her at the restaurant, if we didn't get to know that she had, her mom and the little things that she's a little lonely and goes to movies by herself, we might not have the same attachment to her. The fate of the world helped us get there. But from that moment forward, you almost forget about the fate of the world, don't you?
Yeah, totally. If she was an arsehole, you'd be like, I don't care about this person at all.
Right. And you're not really that's the thing. The 3/4 of that movie, you forget that the reason that he's trying to kill her is to have the machines take over in the future. That isn't even on your mind. You're watching this movie, and it's literally just about, will Sarah survive? I don't know. I mean, yes, you've told me, but this is not what I don't care about that. I want to see her live. That's what I want,
Absolutely.
I think that's what makes that really interesting structurally. As I set up big stakes, and so I'm in, but I wouldn't be in forever. It's not enough yet. And then he gives me enough character to be in even more than the world stakes. Now, that's a very, like I said, structure.
Of course. Now, with ours, though, I'm okay if we don't like Hank that much. Because I've already met Charlize. You know, I've got someone. Basically, by introducing Charlize first, I think in our version we're saying she's probably more of the main character than anyone else is. Even by calling her as Charlize Theron, we're going, she's the A-lister in this movie.
She is absolutely she's the main character. You know. Absolutely.
So, you know, I don't mind if I don't love everything Hank's doing. You know, I think we should like Sam though when we meet Sam, because again, she's going to be the stakes character. If she's, again, it was just something that you were saying, you know, we must find some way to care that Sam is going to stay alive. I'm rushing ahead at the moment, but it's just on my mind here.
When you say that about Hank, it's a really interesting idea that just popped into my head of going, is there a way to trick the audience? And this may fuck up everything we've done in the outline, so forgive me. But is there a way to trick the audience into thinking that Hank is going to be our primary antagonist at this moment?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that's really interesting, actually.
And then realizing that actually they're on the same side.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, yes.
So like the Terminator, for example. What's interesting about the way they set up the Terminator?
Well, the Terminator in Terminator 2.
Yeah, Terminator 2 also. But in both of them, the two people who come back from the future, you don't know right away that like Reese is the hero. You sense it, but there's nothing blatantly about it. They're both looking for Sarah Connor, and there's never any mention of him trying to save her.
Right.
Until the moment that he saves her.
Right.
And they do it on purpose because they set up tension where she's afraid of him.
That's right. They do.
You're supposed to feel that tension.
It's difficult to take yourself out.
Shotgun in his coat, and he's
following. What's the first time that you've seen that movie? Because it's very hard to, because like we know that Kyle Reese is a hero.
Well, having watched it just in an analytical way, when he gets there and he saws off the shotgun.
Totally.
Now, granted, there's a moment where he does flash back to the future that feels you're supposed to be a little sympathetic or empathetic for him, and so that kind of fucks that up a little bit.
Sure.
But you are supposed to feel Sarah's fear of why are these two people coming after me and what's going on.
Sure.
I don't know. I might even be talking myself out of that example, to be honest, because now that I think about the flash forward definitely makes you go, Arnold's the bad guy and Reese is the good guy. When they first arrive, you don't know that, because Reese even has to.
First flashback is with the truck. When he's on the back of the truck.
Forward is where he tries to fall asleep in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like resting, which I never fully understood why. I guess traveling through time just really exhausted him, and so he needed to rest. And he's like in the car, and like all of a sudden it's like a bulldozer, the treads, and then the treads become the future, and then you see all the fighting and the guns. But prior to that moment, he's not necessarily perfectly a good guy. Anyway, point being, is there a way for us to see Hank and not know whose side he's on?
And I
think of him as an obstacle.
Yes.
And in that case, there might be a version where he doesn't have a demon locked up.
That's where I was going to go. I think we lose the demon. We go down. He's got his Ghostbusters stuff there. Again, he could be listening to, I'll say, QAnon style stuff, whatever it is. But
I don't want to make him too unlikable.
Don't want to make him too out there. But you know,
I want to make him a conspiracy nut.
Yes, sure.
And especially right now in 2022, people are very sensitive to conspiracy.
But he's got something that we must go, oh, I don't quite know what's going on. He goes there and he's like, suddenly he puts all the pieces together. He goes to a storage locker, opens it up. It's filled to the fucking brim with guns.
Look, if you didn't have the prologue to the Punisher, and you didn't know he lost his kids, and he fucking was chopping beef, and then came home and opened up a giant fucking basement filled with, you might think he's a psycho killer.
You might.
You know?
Yes.
You might think he's crazy.
Yeah.
In fact, he might be the reason that we're worried about Sam's life.
Totally. Great. Okay. So he's so strike the demon, does all the Ghostbustery shit, goes to a locker, takes out a bunch of guns, puts them in the back of his car, starts driving for Portland.
It's a shame, but sometimes here's what we do, guys. We kill our babies. I hate using that term right now because I'm about to have a baby, so let's not use that term. That's just, it's really bad. But I really liked what we came up with about this demonica. But the reality is it doesn't serve the story as well as what we're talking about right now, which is I don't need all this information from him. What I need to know is that what I know is that Charlize just had this weird reaction in the bath and passed out.
Yeah.
And there was a giant attack in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And now this guy who's going to have Portland circled as an epicenter of demonic energy on his fucking computer screen, which is Ghostbustery, is going to be going to Portland, and he's fucking opening up all this shit and starting shoving guns in a giant black duffel bag. And you go, who the fuck is
going on?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's funny. Yeah, we just got to get rid of it. I'm going to save this as a new draft because
save as a new draft. Yeah.
And some of this stuff is actually
some of this stuff might be used. I mean, again, I like the stuff we came up with, but again, I think the opportunity to present him as at this moment, I don't know what side he's on.
It gives us far more tension, doesn't it?
Gives us far more tension.
And like you said, Charlize is the main character. We don't need
we don't need to like this person.
But knowing he's coming gives us tension.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So Fallout Shelter. Let's go to the Ghostbustery stuff.
There could be something later where this scene could be played out. They capture a demon, they torture the demon.
If we need it. I don't know if we will.
I don't know if we will or not, but it's there. It's there if we want it.
Drug team
no such thing as a wasted idea.
On a GPS map.
Yeah.
Portland. Is like it should be like flashing red with demonic activity or something, you know.
Totally.
Then Hank goes to Hank opens a locker, a huge locker, with an arsenal
to the brim with all manner of fucking weapons, and it could be he's got some dark age shit in there as well, you know.
Okay, so question about that. We haven't fully talked about how one dispatches different kinds of demons.
Sure. Is it a combination of bullets and decapitation? You know?
Yeah, I don't think bullets do it.
I don't think bullets would kill them, but could they hurt them?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think here's what I would say. It's like, because they're immortal or immortal to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Imagine the way that if you shot Wolverine, he would fall to the ground, and if you went up to him before he regenerated, you could cut his head off.
Totally. Same with Arnie in the Terminator. You know, you can pump him full of lead. It shuts him down.
Highlander. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I hope that's not a bad thing, but it's something we understand. Sometimes cliches are good because the audience just immediately gets it, and you don't have to explain. You go, oh,
I mean, it would be really fun. Like, the shot is this: he takes down shotgun, magnum, sniper rifle, blessed axe. You know?
Like silver axe.
Yeah, totally. Inscribed with runes. You know, that kind of
stuff. Like ancient, like Aramaic.
Totally. Like he's got all the things.
He fills a duffel with guns, grenades.
Great.
And then lastly,
an ancient looking blade or axe, whatever it is.
Ancient silver blade.
takes it, sheets it back in, chunks it in the
Aramaic.
Who is this guy?
Engravings. Who the fuck is this guy? You know, and actually, I think we cut back out. He throws the duffel into the back of his car and drives off. And that's it. We now know he's on his way.
Sure. Exterior. Hank's house.
Nights.
So the thing above of charring the steak will be gone as well, but that's fine.
Right. In the trunk.
Peels out.
Peels out. So, the steak, we don't need the steak. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, he could pack a bag of clothes if we wanted it. The question is going to be, if we're really trying to set him up as a villain, I don't actually want to know his personal life at all right now.
Yeah.
If I'm really trying to trick the audience, I see a creepy guy, and he should be like, have some cool tattoos and shit, working at a butcher shop, who, when he gets off and he looks at the news, we know that something weird, like he's got something weird on his mind.
Something weird on
his
mind.
He goes home, and we see that he's been he's crazy, like he's been tracking this shit. We still don't know what that means, because we haven't even introduced the idea of demons.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But again, but we know something's weird.
We know something's weird, and then he fucking leaves, and we go, "Oh shit! Is this the guy who's?"
Also, I really like this setup. I think this is really cool. I think this is really fun.
So from there, I think we go to Sam.
Do we?
Portland. No.
What was the last thing we've seen with Charlize is she's collapsed.
She's collapsed in the bathroom. I think this is the night where she finds out that her parents or her mom was killed. I think we got to meet this girl.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Charlize waking up the next morning. We're all still the same night. Then Charlize wakes up on the floor the next morning.
Yeah.
Fuck. I know exactly what that was. Or I think I know what that was. I go to the local store, start getting supplies or whatever she thinks she can do. And then we have the encounter with the demon in the store.
Okay.
I think. Let's write it, and then if it doesn't work...
Again, we can always move it around. Yeah, I think...
Now I'm going to go to exterior Portland.
Establishing night.
Night. Establishing...
Yeah.
Super Portland. Then I think it's got to be like the cops show up at her house. But I do want to see... Let's see her first.
Yes.
As a bad person. We've said that she's what? Early 20s.
Early 20s. So let's just have the conversation again a little about how, while she's a bad person, we can
she's also got to be
with her, care about her. This might be for after the break, because I feel like this is a longer conversation. I know we've only got a few minutes left.
It is a big conversation. You're right.
Again, it's going to be, how are we going to care about someone who, again, it's not to say you can't care for bad people. You care about bad people.
We're going to see Sam as the person she is.
Yeah.
And the cops
show up.
I think she thinks that they're there for her.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Her, but really her family. It could be her parents and her younger brother.
Totally. Yeah.
In the incidents.
Yeah.
She freaks out.
Great.
That's where we're headed.
That's where we're headed.
From there, just to write down what we said, cut back to
Charlize
the next morning.
Right.
Next morning, she suspects the worst.
What she felt. Yeah.
Run in with demon. And that's where we're headed.
Sounds good.
That's where we're headed.
Excellent. Well, we're going to keep going on this next week. I'm super happy. Again, we're on page 5 of our outline. We're rocking and rolling. You know,
we are rocking and rolling. This is great.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is right about where we want to be, because very soon this adventure is going to be kicking into full high gear. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us who came by.
Quick usual spiel. You're at Twitter, Ben_Lustig. I'm at Jake Thornton. Our Facebook page is Lustig Thornton. Give us a search there. Again, any questions, about our process, any questions about the business of screenwriting, please feel free to ask us anywhere you can find us. So indeed. Yes. And and hopefully, I wonder if we can do our vanity link now. We'll see if we can. That would be good.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Hold on one sec. We're going to stay on while I see.
I don't know how quick it is.
Oh, well, I'm just going to look to see if it's even available. Hold
Great.
on.
All right. This is what we've been working toward, guys.
We've been working towards this. It makes no sense why we care so much, but it's the small wins in life. So you needed to have 100 followers, which we have 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
Also needed to be on. It says set custom URL, and it says choosing URLs is currently unavailable while we update our system.
Boo hiss, YouTube.
We have qualified, ladies and gentlemen. We have, but YouTube is updating their system. So next week, we will let you know what our vanity link is, whatever the heck that's going to be.
It's going to be Lustig Thornton, I assume.
I hope no one else has that.
That said, there are several other Jake Thorntons out there. I'm sure there's a few other Ben Lustigs. So
there are other Ben Lustigs out there.
And maybe some of the last name of Lustig and some of the last name of Thornton have started working together on a YouTube channel. Who knows?
Right.
Someone else is going to get it fuck those guys.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
See you later.
Very much. Look at my cool little ticker that we have going on here.
Like it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Yes.